I'm sharing a reading experience. I took down notes from The Nature of Prejudice by Gordon W. Allport, and I'm sharing them with you now. I hope you listen and receive something worthwhile from this. Remember, these are just my notes, not necessarily a report of what the book is about, and might not even be the words or thoughts of the author. Rather, these notes are what I gleaned or what I thought about while reading. These notes are what caught my interest because the ideas expanded my knowledge or made me think, reflect, or ponder in some way. This video might inspire you to read what I did. It's my hope that you'll search for the best books and gain information and ideas to help you to become a better person. The more you read, the better you'll think. And the better you think, the more you'll be able to face life's challenges successfully. Prejudice is thinking ill of others with imaginary warrant. These imaginary suspicions cause real suffering. It's easier to smash an atom than a prejudice. A wit defined prejudice as being down on something you're not up on. There are two essential ingredients of prejudice. There's a definite reaction, and the reaction is categorical. Over categorization is perhaps the commonest trick of the human mind. There's a reason we employ this trick. Life is too short, and the demands upon us for practical adjustments are so great that we can't let our ignorance detain us in our daily transactions. We have to decide whether objects are good or bad by classes. We can't weigh each object in the world by itself. Rough and ready categories will have to do. If a person is capable of retracting their erroneous judgments in light of new information, or they're willing to investigate, then they're probably not prejudiced. Prejudgment becomes prejudices only if they're not revisable when you are exposed to new knowledge. A prejudice, unlike a simple misconception, is actively resistant to all evidence that would unseat it. We tend to grow emotional when a prejudice is threatened with contradiction. Whenever a negative attitude towards a person is sustained by spurious overgeneralization, we encounter prejudice. The progressive steps of acting out prejudice are as follows. The first is gossip. Next is avoidance. Next comes excluding. Next comes physical attack. Lastly is extermination. Activity on the first level makes the more intense level easier, making the next easier, and so on. Hitler's lies, called truth about the Jews, led the Germans to avoid their Jewish neighbors and friends. This preparation made it easier to enact mandates of discrimination, which made it natural to burn synagogues and attack Jews in the streets. The final step in this macabre progression was the ovens at Auschwitz. The normality of prejudgment. Man has a propensity for prejudice. This propensity lies in his normal and natural tendency to form generalizations, concepts, and categories which oversimplifies the world of experience. Why? Why do humans slip so easily? They do so because of two natural and common ingredients: erroneous generalization and hostility. With plenty at hand to choose from, why create the trouble of learning new languages, foods, cultures, or people. Most of life can go on with less effort if we just stick to our own kind. We can find plenty of people within our own ranks to play with, or live with, or eat with, and marry. Groups tend to stay apart for reasons of effort, congeniality, and pride. Millions of events are all around us. We can't handle so much. To make things easier, we fit things in categories to prejudge the solution. In other words, it's easier to tell 1,000 Californians you can't do business with them because they're sue happy than to deal with one sue happy Californian. Categories have close and immediate ties with what we see, how we judge, and what we do. Scientific laws are examples of rational categories. They're backed up by experience. Even if laws of science are not perfect, we consider them rational if they have a high probability of predicting a happening. It is unlikely that anyone has sound evidence that Scots are stingier than Norwegians, or that Orientals are wilier than Caucasians. Yet these beliefs grow more readily than do more rational beliefs, since intense emotional feelings have the property of acting like sponges. Ideas engulfed by emotions are more likely to conform to emotion than objective evidence. We selectively admit new evidence to a category if it confirms our previous belief. There is a common mental device that permits people to hold on to prejudgments even in the face of much contradictory evidence. It is the device of admitting exceptions to the rules. It is convenient to believe that one category is good and that the other is evil. Don't take a management job or you'll be a bastard like the rest of them. Only two classes exist: the workmen and the bastards. This shows that negative prejudice reflects one's own value system. We prize our own mode of existence while actively attacking what seems to threaten it. Formation of in groups. What is familiar to us tends to become a value. We come to like the style of cooking, the customs, and the people we've grown up with. The familiar is preferred. What is alien is regarded as somehow less good, but there's not necessarily hostility against it. If a diplomat believes ardently in one world, he can't escape the strangeness that he encounters from another culture. Other languages and customs may seem outlandish, if not inferior, and at least slightly absurd and unnecessary. To be devoted to a large circle does not imply the destructions of one's attachment to a smaller circle. Habit breaking is unpleasant. We prefer the familiar. We can't help but feel a bit on guard when other people seem to threaten or even question our habits. Rejection of outgroups. From rumor to riot, from gossip to genocide. In cases where violence breaks out, we can be fairly certain the following steps prepared the way. One, people have been typecast. Two, there is a period of verbal undermining. Three, there has been discrimination. 4. There has been a strain caused by some source, such as the economy, one's status, politics, or fear. 5. People grow tired of their inhibitions and feel they shouldn't have to put up with it any longer. 6. People join a formal or informal movement to support their case. 7. From these organizations, the individual's wrath is socially sanctioned and supported. 8. A precipitating event occurs, usually in the form of an exaggerated rumor. No riot ever occurs without the aid of rumor. The sparks that ignite the powder. Once, number 9. Once a person manifests discrimination and verbal rejection, they now take part in physical attack. Private inhibitions are lessened with social facilitation of violence. It can be likened to the blind temper tantrum of an angry child. Scientific study of group differences. Difference alone does not make for hostility, yet the prejudiced person almost always claims some alleged difference that is the cause of their attitude. They seem to never consider tolerating, let alone loving the people in other groups. Have they considered these questions? 1. Does the reputation rest on indisputable facts? 2. If so, should the trait in question arouse feelings of aversion or hostility rather than indifference, sympathy, or interest? Unless these two questions can be answered satisfactorily and rationally, you may be sure that the well deserved accusation, in fact, is a mask for prejudice. The difference within a given group is always greater than the differences between the averages of any two groups. Every statement, therefore, about a group difference is an exaggeration. The cognitive process. Nothing that strikes our eyes or ears conveys its message directly to us. We always select and interpret our perceptions of our surrounding world. No matter what our thinking style, we are trying to build a world that is orderly, manageable, and simple. Rationalization is hard to detect because they take the form of acceptable social canons and are based upon plausible reasons rather than the real reason. Thus, we continually seek an outer reason for our frustrations and ills, and we're prone to look for human agency. This quirk predisposes us to prejudice. While in reality, our frustrations and ills are mostly due to impersonal causes. Unless we fully realize this fact, we tend to slip into the habit of blaming human scapegoats. Linguistic factors. A label is like a shrieking siren, deafening us to all the finer discriminations that we might otherwise perceive. Each label we use distracts us from reality. The label magnifies one attribute while it masks others. Until we label an outgroup, it does not clearly exist in our minds. People often want and need to designate outgroups, usually to event hostility, even when there is no clear conception of the outgroup in question. To have enemies, we need labels. Stereotypes in our culture. Why do so many people admire Abraham Lincoln? They may tell you it was because he was thrifty, hardworking, eager for knowledge, ambitious, devoted to the rights of the average man, and climbed the ladder of opportunity. Why do so many people dislike Jews? They may tell you it is because they're thrifty, hardworking, eager for knowledge, ambitious, devoted to the rights of the average man, and climb the ladder of opportunity. The same people who accuse the Jews of being seclusive also tend to accuse them of being intrusive. What plainly happens is that people who dislike Jews subscribe to any and all stereotypes that would justify this dislike, whether or not the stereotype is compatible. Dislike requires justification, and any justification will do. For example, a stitch in time saves nine, or haste makes waste. How about birds of a feather flock together, or familiarity breeds contempt? If one state of affair exists, we can explain it. If the opposite state exists, we have something for that too. And so it is with any accusation. The need for sequential and uniform logic does not get in our way. Selective perception and selective forgetting sustain us. Social structure and cultural pattern. Those who are dissatisfied with their life or their status seem to be more prejudiced than those who are improving and happy. Whether anxiety increases, accompanied by the loss of predictability in life, people tend to define their deteriorated state on scapegoats. A single foreign student in the classroom is like a pet, but if the school starts filling up with them, they're regarded as a threat. The person who makes it his business to stir up hatred and hostility towards another is essentially an exploiter. They take tribute not from the one who is being attacked, but from their followers. They picture themselves as a savior from the threat they themselves created. Bigotry can be big business on the part of these naysayers. Here's a lie: the tempting possibility that there's economic, sexual, political, or status gains that can result from a false creation. Choice of scapegoats. The term scapegoat originated as part of a Hebrew ritual described in Leviticus 16:20 through 22. On the Day of Atonement, a live goat was chosen by lot. The high priest lay both hands on the goat's head and confessed the iniquities of Israel while transferring the sins to the beast. The goat was then sacrificed. The people felt purged and for a time being guiltless. This type of thinking is common. From the earliest times, the notion has persisted that guilt and misfortune can be shifted from one man's back to another. If a load of wood can be transferred, then why can't guilt or sorrow? We call this projection. In other people, we see fear, anger, and lust that resides in ourself. It's not we who are responsible for our misfortunes, but other people. Hate arises because people are irritated by their own shame. Anger wants a personal victim and wants it now. Anger and horror demand that their instigator be identified as an individual. The effects of contact. True acquaintances reduce prejudice. In casual contact, we select the person who is misbehaving. They have our attention and disapproval. The dozens who are well behaved are overlooked. Many people start with stereotype, and the tourist mode of contact is unlikely to change them. Prejudice is reflected in both beliefs and attitudes. Those who have closer contact perceive less differences than those who are more remote. Conforming. In the Auschwitz concentration camp, 10,000 human beings were exterminated every day. Colonel Rudolf Haas, the commandant of the camp, when testifying at the Nuremberg trials, readily admits these facts. Haas put obedience to his superior officer above everything else, above the Ten Commandments, above sympathy, above logic. The case of Haas demonstrates a neurotic degree of conformity. The loyalty and obedience involved overshadowed every rational and humane impulse. Frustration. Since they can attain the ecstasy of love, they seek the ecstasy of hatred. It matters little who they hate. Man's instinctive response to frustration is aggressive assertion of some form. This anger tends to center on available rather than logical objects. For example, overhead, birds shit on a farmer's face as he looks up at them. A boy comes out to wipe off the farmer's face, but the farmer beats the boy. He does this for three reasons. First, the birds got away. Secondly, he now has to take time to wash up. And third, the boy seemed to need it anyway. The story illustrates three stages. Frustration generates aggression. Two, aggression is displaced on a scapegoat. Three, the displaced hostility is rationalized and justified. But because the displaced object is not related to the genuine source, the feeling of frustration continues. Aggression and hatred. We are not mere animals, but humans capable of reason, thought, and control. Aggression is not an overpowering instinct that demands an outlet. It is only a capability that might never be brought into play. It is critical to remember that if a person follows instinct, then eliminating prejudice is dim. If mere capacity is involved, it's likely that inner and outer conditions can be created that will avoid arousing this capacity altogether. These people train themselves to direct their energy to the true source of their frustration rather than on a scapegoat. The person who gives way to anger is often sorry for his outbursts and pities the object of his attack, but in expressing hatred, repentance seldom follows. Anger is an emotion, whereas hatred is an enduring organization of aggressive impulse toward a group accompanied by the habitual bitter feelings and accusatory thought. The hater is so sure that the fault lies in the object of their hate that they feel no guilt in their uncharitable state of mind. A continuing readiness to hate has little relationship with reality, although it may be the product of a long series of bitter disappointments in life. The person must hate something. The real roots of the hatred may baffle him, but he thinks up some convenient victim and some good reason. Projection. In the daylight, it's hard for us to see the sapling along the roadside as a highwayman. At night, when objects are shadowy, that person betrays his own guilt by the type of accusation he makes, and by the promptness and glee with which it is made, and by the particular defects the object is noted and exaggerated. This conscience soothing falsity is a means of solving one's conflict by ascribing to another the emotions, motives, and behavior that actually belongs to the person who projects them, not the group who is blamed for them. He needs something so extreme that he need not even suspect himself of being guilty. Projecting hatred solves no problems. It is merely a temporary, self restorative trick. This neurotic device does not relieve the sufferer's sense of guilt or establish lasting self respect. The hated scapegoat is merely a disguise for the persistent and unrecognized self hatred. Thus, we see more than is there because it mirrors our own conscious state of mind. It has been said that all looks yellow to the jaundiced eye. We explain and justify our own state of mind by reference to the imagined intentions and behaviors of others. We fear, therefore, they threaten. The prejudiced personality. In a study of highly prejudiced people, it was found they tend to have the following beliefs. One, there's one right way of doing it. Two, watch out or someone will make a sucker out of you. Three, war is human nature. Four, the world is a hazardous place where men are evil and dangerous. These seem to have nothing to do with prejudice, yet prejudice, prejudiced people have them. This finding helps show that prejudice is woven into a lifestyle. Prejudiced people are forced to organize a whole style of living, including social attitudes, to fit a crippled condition. Prejudice is a total protective adjustment. Demagogues. Demagogues are agitators that play up false issues rather than true issues. They preach a message of intolerance. Whatever is sensed as a threat is hated. They stir up people with anger, distrust, and fear. Spiced up hate appeals are accompanied by extravagant promises, occupied with plots of their own. They keep telling people of the peril they are being saved from. The follower may like the agitator because he provides them with channels of protest and hate, and these pleasures of rage are diverting and temporarily satisfying. The agitator likes it because it's a lucrative racket. Donations, gifts, and sale items keep them in clover. The tolerant person. It is the delinquents rather than the law abiding citizens who attract investigators. It is the disease more than health that interests the medical researcher. And it is the pathology of bigotry and not the wholesome state of tolerance that interests social scientists. It is not surprising, therefore, that we know less about tolerance than about prejudice. Groundwork is in large part the product of home training, of the subtle atmosphere of family living. Tolerant children feel welcome, accepted, and loved no matter what they do. Punishment is not harsh, and the keynote of their life is security rather than threat. The tolerant person is on friendly terms with all people. They have a sense of humor which is associated with self insight. They accept others for what they are and do not live in dread of another's superior power. They feel safe to say, I don't know, and wait until a time brings the needed evidence. When things go wrong, they don't feel a need to blame others and are not known to throw into a panic when threatened by deprivations. Religion and prejudice. Churchgoers are more prejudiced than the average. They are also less prejudiced than the average. Evil comes whenever man turns to God without turning away from self. In other words, people suffering from the sin of pride have failed to learn that the essence of religion is not for one's self-interest, but rather self-negation and love of others. Nothing is easier than to twist one's conceptions of the teachings of religion to fit one's own prejudice. What is particularly striking is the ease at which spiritually minded people seem to slip from piety to prejudice. Religion is a highly personal matter, having quite different meanings in different lives. There was a study done with two groups of 20 men each. In the first group, faith really meant something. In the other group, they were more influenced by social aspects of religious activity. Those who were considered truly devoted were less prejudiced, far less prejudiced. Belonging to a church because it's safe with a powerful or superior in group is likely to be the mark of an authoritarian character and linked with prejudice. Belonging to a church because its basic creed of brotherhood expresses the ethics that one sincerely believes in is associated with tolerance. Thus, the religion and why you are part of it have the opposite effects in personality. It works in contradictory directions because some people seize upon the tribal investments of comfort and security. Others takes its universalistic teaching as an authentic guide to behavior. There are so many words that describe what we're thinking about. We seem unaware that every word and phrase we use is because of someone else. Sometimes the source is remembered, but most of the times it isn't. I likewise am influenced by what I hear, see, what I read. I take it in, I mix it around a bit, spew some of it back out. Sometimes I add chocolate sauce with a cherry on top. This book is the same. I read, but I might come up with something more than what the author intended. It's my suggestion that if you find this material interesting, you'll read it for yourself to see if you'll focus on the same things. My bet is you'll see something slightly, if not altogether, different. I wish you the best in your happy readings. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, matane.